Hi everybody, Happy New Year and welcome to the 2020 Kwanzaa Reflectathon wrap-up video. I'm not doing that twice. Hi everyone, I'm Injeri. Welcome back. Welcome back to the channel. I don't think that I've posted anything since the new year turned, except for the live shows. So I just want to take this opportunity to wish you a wonderful and prosperous 2021. And to just say, like, we're in this together, right? It's gonna be a lot of things. It's gonna be a lot of things this year, and I'm glad that I'm part of a rich and robust online reading community of people who are interesting, who have questions, who are making contributions to our thinking and our culture, and who love books. Because I will tell you, books and bookish community definitely got me through 2020, especially the last 6 months. And I've really worked hard on being on vacation. And so I am feeling much more refreshed than I have in a while. So I am gonna do my best to keep that energy. I feel like I'm glowing, so this is good. Anyway, enough about all of that. Let's talk about the 2020 Kwanzaa Reflectathon. Looking back on the year and looking back on the Kwanzaa Reflectathon, I think this was the most enjoyable Kwanzaa Reflectathon that I can remember in the years that I've done it and that has a lot to do with the fact that 2020 was definitely the year for community and connection and building and transferring relationships, moving them from online and into real life, but also still online because COVID. But it was just like so wonderful to have guests, all of whom I have an in real life relationship with, and to just talk about books, talk about the Kwanzaa principles, connect in the chat, get so many amazing book recommendations, and to grow in community over those 7 days. There are a number of people who started from the beginning and continued on for all 7 days online. That meant a lot to me. And you know, as many of you have personal experience of, the holiday season is a mixed bag of emotions, especially this past year. For a lot of people in the queer community, the holiday season can bring up memories of exclusion and pain. And I know for many holiday seasons, that was my reality. It wasn't in 2020. I felt very connected. We celebrated Christmas for the first time in decades, in addition to Kwanzaa. So it was a really nice opportunity for me and Tommy and everyone to just connect. So I'm really, really thankful for that. And I want to in particular do the thank yous before I get into all the things we're going to do on this video, which I should probably tell you about right now. Number one, I'm going to start with gratitude. Number two, I'm going to take you through the 7 books that I chose that I read in 2020 that I felt exemplified the Kwanzaa Reflectathon principles. And then I am going to announce the winner of the reading planner by Melanin Eclectic. So that's the thing that's going to happen. Let's start with gratitude. Let's continue with gratitude. First of all, I would love to thank the guests. So we had Sherry, I'm trying to do them in order. Sherry, Noria, Bree, Isis, Joseph, Brittany, and Tati. And I think I mixed up the order because I think it was like Brittany, then Joseph, then Tati is what I want to say. Yes. So to each of you, I'm looking at you. thank you very much for agreeing to come on the live show. I know that some of you had more experience and comfort than others in terms of the live show. I think they were all incredible. They all built on each other, and I'm grateful that I have each of you in my life as people who create amazing content, who are thinking, who are teaching me so many things, and who are a part of my everyday reality and community. So thank you very much for being a part of that, and for sharing some of your holiday season with me. I appreciate it. I also want to thank the people who were in the chats and who contributed to our discussion, who gave book recommendations, who just came with all their fire and fun and jokes and salt and educational content. It was amazing to meet it was amazing to meet all of you, but in particular, those who shared a little bit about their own life experience and journey in the chats. That was something that was surprising in a really good way. I feel like I got to know a couple of you a little bit better because your comments were vulnerable, and that means a lot to me. So thank you for contributing to the space with your presence. So I want to move into number 2 of this video, part number 2, and that is my selections. So I read a number of books in 2020. I have a video in which I take you through what I read. I think it's up. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. And so these are some of the books that I read that I want to talk about. And I also will say a couple of things. There were many books that covered many of the Kwanzaa principles because my life is sort of aligned with the Kwanzaa principles, so I'm just naturally attracted to books that have that kind of content. And I made a decision not to include any of my top 2020 books in this list because I wanted to make, with the exception of one, I think, or maybe 2. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. We'll see. But I wanted to just make sure that that there wasn't a lot of crossover, but I already see a couple books that were my favorites, and these were among favorites as well, but they may not have made it to the top 10 list. Okay, let me just keep going. All right, so the first principle is ujamaa. I'm lying. The first principle is umoja, which is unity. And the prompt for that was choose a book that centered the upliftment of African descended people. And so for me, the book that I chose was Rise of the Jumbies by Tracy Batiste. This is book 2 in the trilogy, and I'm not sure if the trilogy actually has a name. I don't know that it does, at least in here. And I just opened it to a page that I annotated. I just want to make sure Tatiana is very, very uncomfortable. So that is another page. So this was a book that I bedazzled. And it was a really great read. Lots of cool annotations. So I'll read the synopsis. When local children from Corinne Lamer's Caribbean island home begin to go missing with suspicious eyes turn to half Jumbie Corinne. To rescue the missing children and clear her own name, Corinne goes deep into the ocean to meet Mama Delo, the dangerous Jumbie who rules the waves. But Mama Delo's help comes with a price. Corinne and her friends must travel with mermaids across the ocean to fetch a powerful object. The only thing more perilous than Corinne's journey across the sea is the Jumbie foe who waits for her back home. That's all I'll read for now. So this was great. So I'm going to talk about the cover art. So the cover was designed by Vivienne To, and Vivienne is the cover artist for this and all of the other books in the series. And I looked Vivienne To up, and she also has done the cover art for Maya the Rising Dark and a number of other middle grade books that I've heard of and seen. So you should definitely check out her website and become familiar with her work because she seems to be doing quite well. So the reason why this book felt like Umoja and Unity for me is because Corinne is not liked because of events that happened in the first book. She's viewed with suspicion, but also she is the only one who can help figure out what happened to these children. And in order to do that, she needs to work with others who don't exactly trust her because she's not fully human. And she also has to work with other worldly beings. And as is the case with many stories involving black mermaids, even though there might be a lot of mistrust and lack of understanding between land dwellers and water dwellers, they're much more connected in African folklore than that we have seen in other kinds of folklore. So that's why unity here is important, because it's about the coming together of African peoples who are separated by mistrust and distrust in order to achieve a common goal. And that the reason why there is a sense of upliftment is because there is a subtext here, which is about the relationship between settlers and newcomers to a land. And it is in order to uplift African descended people that kind of tension has to be dealt with, whether it's the relationship between immigrant communities and the communities of indigenous peoples all over the world, or whether it's gentrification, where there's, individuals who might come from lower income communities who are seeing their communities becoming dismantled and destroyed and being supplanted by upper middle class communities with different interests. So that whole idea of place and home and invasion and restoration and trust, those themes are very significant in this story, and they're very important generally for the upliftment of African descended folks. The second prompt is Kujijagulia, which is self-determination. And this was a book with an African descended LGBT character who inspired you because they were determined AF. So for that, I chose The Stars and the Blackness Between Them, the debut YA fantasy novel written by the lovely Janauda Petrus, Nessa. And the cover design for this was created by Anna Booth, and you can look her up as well. So this is the story of two girls. So 16-year-old Audrey is heartbroken, having just found out she's going to live in America with her father because her mother caught her with her secret girlfriend, the pastor's daughter. Audrey's grandmother, a dancer who drives a white convertible Mercedes and has a few secrets of her own, reassures Mabel that she won't lose her roots, not even in some place called Minneapolis. America have they spirits too, believe me, she tells Audrey. So in Minneapolis, sorry, I know that there's a reference to Mabel, but that's an error. It was Audrey. Minneapolis, 16-year-old Mabel is staring at a picture of Whitney Houston, trying to figure out why she feels the way she feels about her ex Terrell, about her girl Jada, and that moment they had in the woods, and about the vague feeling of illness that's plagued her all summer. Mabel's reverie is cut short when her dad announces that a friend and his just-arrived from Trinidad daughter are coming for dinner. Mabel falls hard and fast for Audrey, and she's determined to help Audrey find her way in America. Never an easy thing for a black girl, as she knows. But their romance takes a turn when test results reveal exactly why Mabel has been feeling low-key sick all summer. Suddenly, it's Audrey who must care for Mabel as she faces a deeply uncertain future. So this I really enjoyed this book. And I also think that it's important. So as you might know, I was born in Canada and I am of Trinidadian heritage, which is very important to me and often what I identify, well, it is my primary cultural influence, even though I'm born and raised in Canada. And this book is really special to me because it was one of the first books that I can remember in recent history that's written by somebody of Trinidadian heritage, but not born in the Caribbean. And I really appreciated that because there are a lot of moments, for those of you who are first generation like myself, there are a lot of moments where you question your own identity or wonder if you're authentic enough. And what Janata did here, as somebody who's not born in the Trinidadian culture, in the country of Trinidad, sorry, I should say Trinidad and Tobago. I just feel like this was really brave and it was really courageous. And I want to ask you to take a look at Sajid's review of this book. Now, this is a bit of an aside, but it's an important one. I will get back to Kujijiguli in a second. So Sajid is a Trinidadian booktuber, lives in Trinidad. Sajid was not happy with this book. And I want you to take a look at Sajid's perspective because even though it's quite different from mine, I 100% respect Sajid's viewpoint and also the critiques of this book, recognizing that I don't have the same kinds of critiques, which makes sense because we come from very different worldviews and lived experiences. But I think that the dialogue between readers from the Caribbean, some readers from the Caribbean who might be critical of this book, and readers from the diaspora, that tension, the strong tension amidst some of our opinions of this book, that is so important to me because that's something that I think needs to be gotten into and potentially reconciled. But I really appreciate that because definitely at the core of this tension is the feeling that the question of whether or not there can be an authentic voice out of the diaspora for people like me who have a Caribbean heritage, but are learning that heritage from a completely other country, from a different generation of people. So I'll leave it at that in terms of the critique, but there's a really important dialogue that's happening here, arising from feedback about this particular book. But the reason that I felt that it really represented self-determination is because both characters are self-determined. Both of them are strong. Both of them want things. Both of them are facing adversity. So on one hand, you have Audrey, who's heartbroken because she had to leave her home to live with a parent that she didn't know very well, and had to deal with depression. Also had to leave right after, having such a beautiful, loving experience with her girlfriend, and to live in a completely different place in a completely different context. And through her relationship with Mabel and through her experiences in the new school and in the new neighborhood, you can see her push through. You can see this magical, powerful, connected part of herself push through in order to make the best of a difficult situation. And similarly, but from the other direction, we have Mabel, who is also coming to terms with herself and her identity, starts to love Audrey and develop this strong friendship, but also is trying to also push through limitations placed upon her body as a result of this illness that she doesn't quite understand. And as it starts to affect her, she has to then pull from places within herself with the help of her friends and family to be okay. And the end of this story is stunning. It was so beautiful. It brought tears to my eyes. And I'm so proud of Janata for writing this. And Janata also won the Coretta Scott King Award, the honor for this book. And the Coretta Scott King Book Award, it's given annually to an outstanding African American author and illustrator of books for children and youth that demonstrate an appreciation for African American culture and universal human values. So congratulations, Janata, for your win, and congratulations for a stunning debut. The third book that I'm going to talk about is my choice for Ujima. Ujima is the principle for collective work and responsibility, and the prompt for this one was a book in which a diverse group of characters worked together toward a goal. And for that, I chose David Mogo, God Hunter by Suyi Davies Okunboya. And this, I will talk about the cover because we're doing covers now in 2021. The cover art was created by Yoshitani, and I took a look at her website, and really, really interesting art there. So she's always been inspired by cultures, histories, and mythologies and patterns from around the world, and she uses those patterns to influence her concepts and illustrations. So take a look, see what you think about her other art. So David Mogo, Lagos will not be destroyed. The gods have fallen to earth in their thousands and chaos reigns. Though broken and leaderless, the city endures. David Mogo, demigod and god hunter, has one task: capture two of the most powerful gods in the city and deliver them to the wizard gangster Lukman Ajala. No problem, right? So this is a debut. And the reason why I thought this book would be a really good example of Ujima, cooperative economics. I'm completely lying, not Ujima. See, I'm trying to use notes, and this is definitely. Oh my goodness, did I do? Hold on one second. Hold on, everybody. Hold on. Yeah. Okay, so the reason why I thought this was a really good example of Ujima, collective work and responsibility, which is a book in which a diverse group of characters work together toward a goal, is that in this world, David Mogo has to sort of figure out how to beat these gods. And the gods he's a demigod, he's not as powerful as a god, we think. And so these gods have taken over Lagos, and they're powerful, and they have minions, and they have disciples who communicate with them and make deals with them so that they can be more powerful to make sure that the gods can run Lagos. And there's a huge backstory about how the gods ended and the godlings ended up in Lagos, and it involves the heavens and all sorts of realms and so on. But in order to win, the main character, David Mogo, has to enlist the support of other powerful people. So people who can commune with the gods, wizards, soldiers, politicians, religious leaders. There's a whole bunch of people who have been impacted by the gods coming down and trying to take over, that in order for him to succeed, he needs a community of people that don't necessarily all agree with each other. So it's these temporary to a certain extent, temporary alliances that have to happen. And all of this, so this is a work of African futurism, because it's set in a futuristic Lagos. It's also, and more importantly, a work of African Jujuism, which is a term that was coined by Dr. Nnedi Okorafor to represent the reality that a lot in many African fantasy books, or African, not even fantasy, because a lot of science, speculative fiction, or science fiction and fantasy written by African peoples are not, they're genre bending in a lot of ways. So the categorizations often don't actually capture the beautifully nuanced work that comes out of the continent of Africa and its diasporas. But in any event, what African Jujuism represents is this notion that when we talk about gods and the Orisha, right, we're actually talking about entities that people in life in 2021 believe, pray to, connect with, have a relationship with. So it's not enough to call it fantasy, right? Like if you were reading a work of Christian fiction that like had God as a character, you wouldn't call that, maybe you would, but it's not called like fantasy, right? So when we read stories that have gods from different African cosmologies, like Oshun, like Obatala, like Shango, who are actually gods that people worship here and now, calling that fantasy doesn't capture that, and it doesn't recognize that legacy of these strong relationships between indigenous spiritual concepts that remain contemporary and when they show up in these books. So that's why it's a work of African Jujuism. But this was a really, really great read, and I felt that it exemplified this is such a chatty video, that exemplified Ujima for sure. Okay, so now the next principle is, and the other big thing is that there's a queer couple, and I won't get into a review of it, but there's a queer couple, a lesbian couple, and because the author included this lesbian couple, we also see the way people around this couple react to them, which I think is really, really important when you have a story that's written for the most part from the perspectives of heterosexual people. So that was something I appreciated, and definitely an important part of Ujima. Okay, Ujima is cooperative economics, and this prompt was choose a book that got you thinking about sharing of economic resources. And the book that I chose for that was The Water Dancer by Ta-Nehisi Coates. And the cover art by The Water Dancer was made by Khalida Rawls. Merging sharp hyper-realism with poetic abstraction, Khalida Rawls paints African American women and men submerged in glistening water, bodies swarmed by a flurry of bubbles, ripples, and refracted light. She recognizes that water is very healing for people, and also recognizes the historical connotations to racial exclusion and cultural fears about water. So I was really fascinated by the cover of The Water Dancer because it called up so many things for me. And obviously, being somebody of Caribbean heritage, islands are surrounded by water. Our people got from the African continent came from the African continent, from Liberia and from Gabon, eventually to Trinidad, by crossing water during the transatlantic slave trade. And also, my parents flew over water to get to Canada before I was born. I was born inside water, inside my mother. And so, we have a relationship with water, which is one of the reasons why I'm so interested in mermaid stories. And when I started reading The Water Dancer, when I picked it up, I wasn't sure that I thought it might be potentially a Black mermaid story. It is not. But anything that involves Black people, speculative fiction, fantasy, and water, I'm totally there. Okay, so This book represents cooperative economics because it takes place during the like antebellum time period. Yes. And we are presented with a number of different kinds of economic systems. So like, I'll call it like the plantation economy, where there's like a white male at the head who gets to benefit off of the labor of African bodies, African peoples, and then seeks to continue breeding so as to increase his return on investment by not having to purchase additional African lives. It's disgusting. So there's that. And then we have Hiram, who is the son of the plantation owner and an enslaved African woman who has inherited this power called conduction. And so that, as a result, in the story, Hiram comes into his power of conduction. And in doing that, he's able to do things. And as a result of being able to do things, he comes into contact with different kinds of economic structures, like cooperation, like bartering, like this kind of quasi colonial / social justice-y feminist collective thing. So he is faced with different ways of sharing and controlling resources and wealth. And there's a particular, if you've read this, there's a particular scene with him and a baker or a man inside this store where you can buy sweets. That was just this sort of poignant moment about resources sharing and wealth. And there's an overarching theme around community wealth in this book, and I thought that would be the appropriate choice for Ujamaa cooperative economics. And the next book is so the next prompt is Nia, and that is a book in which an African descended character finds or develops their purpose. So I want to talk about this cover. So this was written by Nalo Hopkinson, my favorite author, and the cover art was created by Rudy Gutierrez, who is an American artist illustrator of Puerto Rican heritage, and his art has been described as wall medicine, ancient yet contemporary, urban in sense, and musical in feel, and is known for creating images that combine elements of indigenous art with that of urban culture. And the reason why I chose Nalo Hopkinson's Brown Girl in the Ring for Nia purpose is because in the world that Nalo Hopkinson has created, so this is a futuristic Toronto post-apocalypse. The city is run by gangs, and just all of this, like, there's a lot sort of going on in this story. And I just feel like in order for the main character, Tijan, in order for her to save the day amidst chaos, she has to understand, she has to come into her own power, literally. She has to accept it. She has to come into it. She has to accept her role in her family as a descendant of very, very powerful people. And in fact, I was wondering when I was trying to select this book, I thought a lot about David Moko Godhunter, and I thought, these are very similar heroes' journeys in a way. But this was a shining example of Nia because she had to come into that sense of purpose, and the sense of purpose was connected to the community. So it wasn't just about saving herself or those she loved, but it was about the entire community, the entire structure. So that was a great book. So we have 2 more to go. The next prompt is Kuumba, Creativity, a book in which an African descended character demonstrates power through creativity. Now, this, as soon as I read the prompt and thought which book from 2020 I would choose, I knew it would be this one. For a lot of different reasons. So this is E.B. Zaboy's My Life as an Ice Cream Sandwich, and I did not research the cover for this, so maybe I'll stop here. and play the recording. So I'll just sit here. The cover artist is Frank Morrison, who does a lot of really beautiful urban digital art, and he used to be a graffiti artist. You should definitely look him up. Hopefully that's all the time I needed, but yes. So E.B. Zaboy is the author for this one, and I already read America Street by E.B. Zaboy, and I really enjoy her take on like immigration related stories, which this is, and which the other one was as well. And so in My Life as an Ice Cream Sandwich, so let me read this. Summer 1984, Ebony Grace Norfleet flies from Huntsville, Alabama to Harlem, where she'll stay with her father while her mother deals with the trouble that's arisen for Ebony Grace's grandfather, Jeremiah Norfleet, one of the first black engineers to integrate NASA in the 1960s. Ever since she came to live with him when she was little, he nurtured his granddaughter's love for space and science fiction, especially Star Wars and Star Trek, both of which she's watched dozens of times. So even as Ebony Grace struggled to make friends, she also had her grandfather and the imaginary worlds they created together. New York, though, is different. Hip-hop, breakdancing, double dutch, graffiti. Harlem is a loud and bewildering place for a sheltered country girl, and her first reaction is to retreat into her imagination, but soon 126th Street reveals that it has more in common with her beloved outer space adventures than she ever dreamed, and by summer's end, Ebony Grace discovers that maybe she's not an alien after all. Broken but beautiful Harlem has a place for a girl whose eyes are always on the stars. This was such a heartwarming and beautiful story. But this is so much about Ebony Grace's creativity. E.B. Zaboy takes us inside the imagination of this girl, an imagination that helps her survive, that helps her overcome sadness for no longer being in contact with her grandparents, or no longer being in contact with her mother in an unusual, harsh society that she finds very difficult to engage with, right? So it was... yeah, just very, very gritty. Some difficult scenes around like just little children experiencing like the sometimes harshness of city living in urban environments. So it wasn't the easiest read in some moments, but it was a very beautiful book. And I think that the main character's ability to understand her surroundings using her imagination and the power of her imagination to help her integrate herself into a new place were very beautiful to see, and sometimes a little bit disorienting, but I would really commend this to you because E.B. Zaboy here does something that I commend Akwaeke Emezi on as well, which is to really take us into the internal landscape of a character and help us see the world from their perspective and to engage with it in that way, even if that perspective is very different from the people around them. So that was a really wonderful read and really exemplified creativity. And then the last book that I want to talk about is A Phoenix First Must Burn. And again, I will pause so that I can tell you more about the cover for this one. All right, me again. The cover artist is Kate Renner, but I couldn't find that much about her. So I will just let you know that I really enjoyed the cover. I love those dual tones, and I loved the light on the braids and the light on the face. And the like beautiful dark floral, so gorgeous. This was edited by Patrice Caldwell. So Beyonce's Lemonade meets Octavia Butler in 16 tales by best-selling and award-winning authors that explore the Black experience through fantasy, science fiction, and magic. And I have to tell you that I really enjoyed the short stories in this collection. And in preparation for this video, because I don't always remember what happens in stories, especially in short stories, I had to go back and listen, and read, like look at my notes and so on, and read a couple of passages from the stories to remind myself of what happened. And there's this beautifully sexy vampire story. There's a really cool time travel story. Again, written from the perspective of like a young Black person in an urban environment amidst anti-Black racism. There was a lot of really interesting stories that change the usual tropes into something completely different. I remember going to a workshop last year. I love that I can say that. Last year, run by Clarion West. And in that workshop, we did this great exercise facilitated by LP Kindred, who is also an incredible writer and just phenomenal person. And we were asked to think about tropes, tropes in fantasy, and then fix them. And that was the first time that I had done an exercise like that before, and it was really cool, and it opened my mind to the kinds of things I'm attracted to when I read fantasy. And there were a number of short stories in this book that began with tropes, or that just under the surface had some very common and problematic tropes for Black peoples, for Black queer peoples in particular, and they just turned them on their head and fixed them. The vampire one being the vampire story being one example of that, and a couple of others, like the kill the witch trope, right? Kill the evil witch. So yeah, it was a wonderful collection, and it exemplifies Imani. So the prompt for Imani was choose a book that strengthened your faith. And while it might not be immediately obvious why I would have chosen this book, the reason is when you read a lot of science fiction and a lot of fantasy and a lot of speculative fiction, it can sometimes become repetitive. And so I tire when I see books that have very common storylines that don't do anything new necessarily, or don't even do what they're supposed to do quite well. And YA fiction is definitely a place where I'm finding myself more concerned than in any other kind of Black science fiction and fantasy, because I think that we are seeing stories that are tropey in a bad way, and stories that don't fully flex their imaginative and emancipatory muscles. So you have stories that kind of get there, but then let you down at the end because the character arc just drops out of the sky. And it's like, wait a minute, you could have made this Black queer female character this way, and instead you just turn back to traditionalism. I don't understand that. So this collection of short stories gave me hope, because some of the stories were very different and had a lot of endings that I didn't expect, and character nuances that I didn't expect. And they took tropes that I really enjoy, that are really recognizable, and then turn them into something new and beautiful. And I think that is the importance of Octavia Butler's work. And given that these stories were inspired by her and written by, younger women of color, younger Black women in particular, it just restored my hope in the genre, and restored my hope in future generations of Black speculative fiction writers. So those were my thoughts for all 7 of the prompts. And now we're going to get to the part of the video where I announce the winner. Now, I am not sure who the winner is going to be, and I am going to be enlisting Tomi's help. I'm asking Tomi to take off her earphones. Okay, so Tomi,
yes, ma'am.
I have listed all of the people who filmed a video for the Kwanzaa Reflectathon from 1 to 7.
Okay.
Okay, so the list is here. Tomi, do you know do you know the numbers? Do you know which numbers I've assigned to which person?
No.
Okay, so Tomi has no idea. Now I'm going to ask you to choose a number from 1 to 7. Don't choose it yet. And the person whose name corresponds with the number that Tomi chooses is going to win the reading planner. So I had 9 people who created videos. I eliminated the people who are my in real life friends who have already purchased, and pre-ordered and bought and are using the planner. So we're all out of it. And then we've got 7 people who remain. So Tomi, choose a number from 1 to 7.
6.
Okay. And the winner is Chloe. So Chloe from Thistle and Verse. So Chloe, whose picture I will put right here, is incredible. So Chloe's channel, I'm not sure. I'm sure it's over a year now that she's had her channel. But Chloe, I know because she is a co-lead of the solar-powered Afrofuturism slow reading group along with Isis. Chloe is the mastermind, and I will tell you why I call Chloe a mastermind, but the mastermind behind Thistle and Verse, which is her booktube channel. So I want you to stop right here and subscribe to Chloe, because that's a thing you should do. So just, I'll wait for you. I'll just wait. Okay. Thank you for that musical interlude. So now that you've subscribed to Chloe, her book reviews are incredible. The only thing that's more incredible than Chloe's book reviews are her real live synopses of stories. Please join us in Solar Powered, or just find yourself an opportunity to hear Chloe just tell you what a book is about in real life, because she's hilarious. She's got a very technical mind. She's got an incredible ability to remember details, characters, plot points, like textures of the story, something that I'm not great at. And she is so, she's incredible at curating lists of new releases. I look to her lists for things that are coming out. She's a great source for that. She is masterful at getting arcs. I'm not sure how she does it, but she is her work ethic around getting an arc, reading it, putting it up in time for people to read it and you know, participate in the release. Like, her ethics and work ethic around that are amazing. And so, yeah, she's just absolutely wonderful, and I think is so deserving of a free planner from Melanin Eclectic. So I definitely would say that say congratulations to you, Chloe. I'm glad you got the thing. All right. So I will reach out to Chloe, and then we will get that planner off to you. And last thing, you can use the prompts for the Kwanzaa Reflectathon as a reading challenge for the year. So as you decide what you're going to read for 2021, picture Kwanzaa Reflectathon in December of 2021 and just be good to the you of the future and read with purpose. Read books that are edifying, read books that center the experiences of Black folks, in particular Black queer folks, and be prepared to be a part of this at the end of this year. To that end, I would like to shout out an amazing resource and community for you if you want to think about how you can read more purposefully and more broadly. And that resource is none other than Rebel Women's Lit. And that's the Rebel Women's Lit Book Club out of Jamaica. It is a Black queer book club out of Jamaica, but it is more than a book club. It is an e-store. They've got a Patreon. There's a high Instagram presence. There's a lot of engagement. And if you want to get a feel for Rebel, I call them Rebel Women. If you want to feel for that, then you should check out the video that I'll put in the cards here. And that is the 2020 Caribbean Book Awards. That's probably the wrong title, but it's their 2020 awards, and it's just amazing to hear them talk and lift up so many amazing content creators. And I think Jeraine is the one leader. I apologize if you're working in a team, which I know you are, so I apologize. But I just want to big up Jeraine because she's amazing. She is smart. She's beautiful. She also reads so widely and is just really generous with her thoughts and generous with her platform. and really thoughtful and works super hard. Like she's just amazing. The kind of ideas that I'm seeing come out of her team and her in this past year just, you know, far surpass a lot of things that I've been seeing on BookTube as of late. So if you want to learn more about books, like the hashtag Read Caribbean, if you want to learn more about books written, published in the Caribbean, and hear reviews of those books by people from the Caribbean, recall my comments about the stars and the blackness between them, then I would definitely urge you to get to know Rebel Women's Lit. They have a challenge this year. They have 2 challenges actually, so you can use go to their Instagram and see their reading challenges. I think one is about reading with intention, like deliberately. I think it's like the Read Deliberately challenge, and then the other challenge is about reading for fun and for pleasure. And so I think there are about 5 or 6 or 7 prompts for each of those, and you can use that throughout the year, and also use their videos and their Instagram as a resource for interesting Caribbean books by Caribbean authors across all sorts of genres. So I'm gonna definitely shout out Rebel Woman Lit Club, and in particular Drain. So definitely check out their channel. And then also, I will say that if you are a book club, they have a reading tag that is for book clubs in particular. It's the Newbie Booktuber tag, and it's a tag that you can do as the club itself, not as an individual. So I thought that was really innovative, and our book club has to do it, I think. So definitely check them out for that. That's all I have to say. This is going to be an extremely long video. Thank you for watching it all the way to the end. And if you have made it, this is probably going to be like 56-minute long video. It's wild. If you've made it all the way to the end, then I would like you to include a
Medal.
or a trophy.
Or a trophy.
That's good. Also a little salty, but a trophy or a medal, because you are #1 for making it all the way. So thank you very much. Remember to read with purpose. I will see you in my next video. Bye.